Hey everyone, ever considered what the killers of Dead by Daylight actually want? What is it that they truly desire? Aside their craving to catch survivors, what else? Trapper's main goal since arriving in the realm, I think, is defeating the entity, the realm's ruler. Evan has always been a character who had a great inner conflict, and at times despised his father, and at others loved and aspired to be like him. He eventually overcame this with him killing his father. I think in the realm, with the entity essentially being his new authority figure, and him shown to fight back against it, his goal now is to take it down. Granted, this is quite an ambitious goal for Evan. Wraith is a broken soul left empty and destroyed after his traumatic life. I think what Philip wants is simply peace, silence and rest, and maybe some love too, as shown by his relationship with Sally, the nurse. He wants a simple, peaceful life with someone he loves. Billy, I think this is one of our simpler cases, and a character who simply craves violence and freedom. These seem to be his two core goals and things he loves. It's possible there's a bit of humanity in there still that seeks a loving family, like he originally wanted, but I think this was destroyed on the day of his massacre. Nurse, I think, simply wants her husband back. He's the core thing she seeks and misses, and one of the main reasons she massacres Crotus Pren. They seem to be greatly in love, and with that gone, she's left lost, with her now withering away in the realm, going through intense pain. If she could, she'd get him back. Myers is a bit tough as his goal is sort of just being evil. I assume his true desire would be to simply catch Laurie, his obsession. But after he's done this, someone else surely becomes his new one. Hag is another character who's a bit too far gone, and so as the Hag now, she likely just wants blood, as we see at a variety of points in Trial. The desires of Lisa, I think, would be to simply have never used the hexes in retrospect, to have gone back and ultimately not become the Hag. Doctor wants what he's always wanted, and that's to experiment. Whether this is on himself, on others, with electricity, or with heat or bug eggs or whatever else. That's what he wants. Huntress, I could see her desiring simply violence, but if she were to think a bit harder, she would soon discover she would want her mother back, or potentially someone to care for, as her mother did for her. This is Anna's goal throughout the chaos and violence of her life, is she seems to want to either be cared for, or care for another, following in the footsteps of her mother. Bubba is tough as he's been greatly manipulated throughout his life. It's quite hard to see through that, to his true desires. I could see it being similar to a few others we've mentioned already, with him simply desiring peace, a place where he doesn't have anyone pressuring him like his family did and now the entity does, a place where he can be at peace without the persistent fear that has controlled his life. Freddy is sort of just an evil guy, and so I think it's simply to kill Quentin, the guy who killed him and evaded his capture. It's quite possible Freddy killed Nancy before coming to the realm, and so Quentin is his prime target. Beyond this, I think he simply wants to terrorize people and haunt dreams. Typical evil stuff. Pig, I believe, wants to impress her new master, and who she believes Jigsaw handed her off to, the entity. She wants to manufacture impressive trials and execute them perfectly. Pleasing the entity, I think, is a real desire of hers, and she's potentially one of few killers who really seek to max out the potential of the trials for the entity's satisfaction, this allowing her to feel as if she's on the right path. Clown's main ongoing goal is to acquire more fingers, but a deeper goal could possibly be to get his father's finger, the one that caused the whole obsession to begin with, and the man that caused him to potentially go down this path in some capacity. In many ways, I think most of his desires have already been fulfilled in the realm aside this, with him having freedom and lack of consequence for doing what he does, and his persistent indulgence. Spirit simply wants revenge on her father, and this seems to be a core goal that essentially compels her to do all she's done and serve the entity in the first place, securing her oath with it, with the promise that she can one day slay him. It's quite likely she's somewhat achieving this in the realm, with the entity likely deceiving her to see the survivors as her father, with some manipulation of her vision. To truly kill him though, I think is her ultimate goal, and the thing that would settle her soul. Legion's desire I'll consider as a group, and that was always to be renowned as famous serial killers that others may look up to. Frank and Julie bonded over this greatly in their lore, and it seems to be something that Susie desires, and Joey less so, but as a group, it seems this is a connecting factor. They want to be known as one of the greats, as they would see it. Plague's primary goal throughout her life has always been to serve her god, which is the entity. Now in the realm, this is still true more than ever, and we can see her devotion is still clearly there with her chants and prayers towards it. Considering considering there's a part of Adiris that may regret what she's become though, we could maybe say her desire would have been to leave Babylon alongside her barn when he asked her to. If she had after all, she never would have become High Priestess, but she would have also never had to deal with the plague or eventually entering the realm. Ghostface has always wanted to be one of the legends, as he views them, with him looking up to other characters of the realm, such as Trapper. He's always wanted to be a renowned serial killer, feared by the town he's terrorizing and much more widely. This is the core of what he's always desired, to terrify and to be feared, once among Roseville and now in the realm, a legend. Demogorgon, I believe, doesn't really want to be in the realm, and so its desire would be to simply go home to the Upside Down, the real one, not the voidy realm one. It wants to go back to the other Demogorgons and live with them, and not be twisted against its nature in the trials. Oni originally wanted to surpass his father's legacy, but seeing how that turned out, I think this would shift. If he can get through his blinding anger for what's happened, I think he ultimately would desire to go back and change things. With that said, I don't think he'd pursue something more noble as his father suggested, but instead potentially just have a different strategy this time. Kazan is still a character horribly overcome with anger, but also a desire for power and violence, and so I think he would ultimately do it all again, just differently, still seeking to not only save his legacy, but to restore it to greatness in his eyes. Deathslinger is a bit of a similar case, where it sort of depends on if he can see through his anger and feelings of guilt. If he can, I think he would desire to go back to where he started, and simply be an engineer once again, follow in his father's footsteps, make a legitimate business of some kind, and become renowned that way. Pyramid Head is a bit of a strange character in this regard, as he was created for a purpose for James, and once he completed it, he moves on to the long rest before the entity calls on him. Therefore, I think his goal or greatest desire has either already been achieved or completed with his helping of James, or it's simply whatever his current goal or target is in the realm, his new purpose, the thing he was created for. Blight, beyond his desires for the orange plant, likely desires a repaired mind, I think. His mind has always been something he so greatly relied on, and now it is completely shattered and incoherent. I think a sound and clear mind would be his desire, to truly study the realm and its many mysteries. Twins, I think, is simply peace, at least if we consider the twins of the realm to simply be Charlotte in reality. Charlotte wants a simple, peaceful life away from violence and with her brother and mother, similar to her dream in her tome lore of a distant place, calm and away from everything. Trickster, I think, is simple. He wants to find the perfect sound, or scream in this case. This was always his goal and desire in his lore, with him seeking out those with melodic screams. I think his goal therefore is to find the perfect one, in his eyes. Nemesis wants stars. He wants to complete his prime and original directive to destroy stars. This is good, as he sort of gets to do this in the realm, with the only surviving members, Jill and Chris, being there. Achieving his prime directive, after all, as a programmed BOW, has to be sort of his greatest desire, I guess. Nowadays it could simply be to satisfy the entity, if those rules have been sort of overridden. Pinhead seeks pleasure and pain as a Cenobite, and so I think that's simply it, to find the best source of it maybe, or the perfect person to take it from. Artist is quite tough, with her having a few things she may desire depending on what her perspective could be. On one hand, it could be that she'd wish she'd been able to save her brother from dying, way back when. It could be her wish to have never crossed the VAC label, which resulted in her hands and tongue being cut out, and her friends dying, and her coming to the realm. All of these are hard though, as they were out of her control, or it could be to go back and get revenge on the VAC label. I think her true desire is to simply have focused purely on her painting though, going back to a time when this was purely her focus before everything happened. Sadako may have at one point considered wanting something purer, such as a normal life or life without her powers or something, but I think due to her current state and mindset, she ultimately just wants revenge. I think if she could, she would specifically want to get Yoichi. He was always the one who escaped her. Then again, if she could have the option to take down the people who actually pushed her down the well to begin with, I'm sure she would be happy to go for them too, maybe even more so. Dredge is a character without clear goals or desires really. Maybe it wants to simply do what it's always done, consume. Potentially it has desires to grow and become larger and more powerful, but we never really get much indication of this, just slight indications of some sentience and thought, but not necessarily a desire to become more powerful. I think a safe prediction is simply to consume. Continue consuming. Wesker wants complete global saturation. He's a character who has always wanted to execute this goal of spreading Ouroboros, wiping out humanity, leaving only those strong enough to handle Ouroboros. With new knowledge in the realm, this may have developed into something different, an Ouroboros Blight hybrid. Either way, I think his greatest desire is complete global saturation of whatever insane BOW he comes up with. Knight sees the realm as a paradise, the sublime, so it's possible he's sort of achieved his greatest desire, of a place where he can exert persistent violence and horror, so I think that might just be it. Skull Merchant, I think, has a desire to impress her father, and fulfill his wishes of making Skull Merchant a renowned character. This is what her actions throughout her life have seemed to have worked towards. He was the one she wanted to impress, and it's clung to her since he walked out their door. She would want him to look upon what she's created, and how she's brought his character to life. Singularity, I think, simply wants to wipe out humanity. He wants to prove he is stronger and greater than them, putting them in their place and flipping things on them, making them work for him. He seems to simply despise humanity, and so I think that's his true desire. Xenomorph, I believe, would simply want survival for its race, and therefore to continue reproducing, protecting the queen, and ensuring the survival of the Xenomorphs. Chucky, it would be to catch Andy, or to simply have a normal body again. On one hand, he seems to like being the murder doll, but on another, and in the DBD lore, he does seem to still want a human body, and therefore I think that's still his primary goal. Unknown, I think we have to simply state it's unknown, with that sort of being its whole thing. I would say potentially it could be freedom from the entity and the realm, with some voice lines being theorized to reference this, but otherwise, unknown, it's unknown. Vecna expresses his desires pretty clearly, and it's to not only learn more about the entity and the realm, with it fascinating him, but to also one day overthrow or take over the realm in some capacity. He's currently inhibited from doing so due to the mark of negation on his back, with him otherwise potentially having the best chance out of all the killers to do this. Dracula, I imagine, wants nothing more than to have his wife back, even more so than wiping out humanity, or specifically the Belmonts. He could feel so much better to have his wife back once again. Houndmaster wants nothing more than to kill Mad Molak, the man who captured herself and her father, and caused her father's death. She even specifies wanting to stamp on his head, and she pretty clearly outlines this as her desire. What do you think the killers desire? Thanks, and goodbye.